IB Nation, welcome to the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, live on a Monday, which of course means breaking down the latest in Notre Dame recruiting. And Shaun Davis, my good friend here, co-host of Lucky Lefty Podcast. Shaun, we talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago. We were giving people a heads up like, hey, man, June is going to be busy. It's going to be wild. I mean, you think about it, in this small stretch of time, in only about 10 days or so, dating back to like Friday, right? All the official visitors are going to be on campus for Notre Dame for the 2025 class. So we're going to have very definite understanding of what the 2025 class is going to look like over the next couple weeks. And we have three very important visitors that visited this past weekend. We're going to break that down, the latest. You would have already had all this information over the weekend because me, Shaun, and the rest of the staff were working like dogs, Shaun, to get some intel out to the board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. A lot of good intel there, so make sure that you're signed up. Nothing that we're discussing today hasn't been told to you all on the message board, so you're wasting time if you're not signed up at boards.irishbreakdown.com to wait until our Monday episode. But we'll break that down. Three big visitors this past weekend. I'll give you a couple little nuggets on a couple of the commits that were on campus as well, because I think it was very interesting just having a conversation with a few of them. Segment 2, we're going to be previewing this week. Very unorthodox here, Shaun. This doesn't happen too often. It's usually weekends Notre Dame kind of saves for official visitors, but starting tomorrow on Tuesday, there is again going to be three very important official visitors on campus for Notre Dame in official visitors. If you guys want the next weekend's visitor list, you should tune in to IB Nation Sports Talk tomorrow on Tuesday, because I'll be breaking down who is going to be there over the weekend. And then segment 3, good friend of the show, Brian Smith, is going to be joining to talk a little Deuce Knight, his performance down in OT7 in the state of Florida, obviously put on by Overtime, and he was named MVP of the event by On3 with his performance down there. So we'll be discussing Deuce Knight, Brian's impressions, what he saw from him, improvements he's seen this offseason. We're going to be breaking it all down. Shaun Davis, as I start every show, though, my friend, how are you? How's your week going so far?
I'm great, man. Absolutely. I got the biggest laugh of my life right before we came on air, bro. I came downstairs. My wife, she was messing with me and teasing me, her and my sister-in-law. And they said, we're about to go get coffee, as they laughed and walked out the door. And then all of a sudden their laughter turned into screams. And I looked out the door and they were attacked by a swarm of cicadas on their way to the car. And they tried to run back into the house and unlock the door. I just laughed. I thought it was the funniest thing in the world.
Why'd you laugh?
Yeah.
Why'd you just laugh?
I laughed because they had just got done teasing me, bro, about some things. So I locked the door, and she was fumbling to get her keys, and then they ran into the lawn and everything. I thought, man, I got the biggest kick. So I'm wonderful right now. I'm in a great mood, man. I'm in an absolutely great mood, man. How was your weekend?
It was good, man. It was good. I did get a little bit of downtime on top of, doing a little bit of work the last couple of days, because we went to the zoo yesterday, Shaun. Kids love the zoo, if you didn't know. They absolutely love the zoo. I know that you probably know that at this point, right? But yeah, man, it was good. It was good. It's been like high 70s, low 80s here in Jersey the last few days. So it's been beautiful weather. It's been nice, man. Been trying to get outside as much as possible. I got a little bit of sun this weekend. So it's moving, man. It's moving.
Yeah,
it's June.
It's June. Popped the smoker for the first time this summer.
Oh, what'd you smoke? What did you smoke?
Oh, man, just smoked some bone-in chicken breasts, some bone-in short ribs yesterday that turned out absolutely fabulous. Shout out to my mom that told me and showed me how to do like a little gravy, on the stove as they were in the smoker. And then once I took them out the smoker, threw them in the gravy. Thank you, Mom. Fantastic gravy, bro.
The smoker is just incredible, by the way, Shaun. Absolutely incredible. Like I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I'm not a big turkey guy, right? So Thanksgiving's like actually not one of my favorite food holidays, right? But I had smoked turkey a couple years ago and I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. Like this is better. I like this a lot more. So yeah, my father-in-law has one of the high-end smokers as well. I don't even know what brand or any of that type of stuff is, but he smokes everything now, like smoked pork butt and You know, like you
Man,
said, the chicken on the bone, this
yeah,
barbecue, like, yeah, he does everything in there, man. Does everything.
yeah, absolutely love it, man. Now I'm getting into like the different types of chips, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Mhm.
learn, I didn't know I was supposed to, you could soak your chips in different things, to increase the flavor, put it in
Yeah.
vinegar water, things of that nature. So
Yeah, I don't know
yeah,
anything about that, man. I know there's a different variety of the wood chips, but I have no hickory, and I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know any of that stuff.
I'm
Don't
getting
know any of
into
it.
it and I'm loving it, man. It
Okay.
definitely adds to the flavor. So
Okay. Man, my in-laws have it set up, Sean. They got the smoker, and then they've been doing the smash burgers a lot lately. So they got like the
really
utensils, legit utensils for the smash burgers and everything, which
nice.
is yeah, man. Big fan. Big fan.
Yeah.
Anytime they invite us over for a barbecue, I'm like, yes, we're going. We're going. So absolutely. Free meal and really good food. That's the combination that you want. Let's get into official visitors this past weekend, guys. I know you didn't come for our pleasantries over smokers and barbecue, so we're going to get into the madness that is the recruiting world. And it's not as mad in Notre Dame land because you're sitting here with 20 something commits at this point. You're going down
Mm,
the stretch. And Sean, I like this types of weekends, man, because there's some schools that have like 10 plus kids on official visits each weekend, right?
yeah.
Notre Dame, you had 3 this weekend. You just had 3 guys. So for one, for a content creation perspective, a lot easier to get in touch with 3 kids compared to 15 or 20, right? Like it's just easy math there. Let's start with the player that I know you're incredibly high on and have been for a while, a player that all Notre Dame land is very high on for obvious reasons. Let's talk about 2025 Bradenton, Florida IMG Academy linebacker Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, of course, the younger brother of former Notre Dame All-American linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So, Sean, first visit that Nathaniel took to Notre Dame was back in January. Took an unofficial visit out to Notre Dame. Loved it. At that point, I think Notre Dame really pushed themselves to near the top of the leaderboard, probably one of the top 2 or 3 schools on that list coming into this official visit because it was really interesting. Originally, Nathaniel, and I had this in my visit preview last week, Nathaniel was talking about taking his official visit to Notre Dame sometime this season, right? Because the tentative plans have always been, up to this point, to do a commitment during the season or a national signing day in December. Like that has been the plan. He decides to push it up, which I think is very interesting, obviously. And he told me, just quite frankly, he's been itching to get back to South Bend, man. Like he wants to get up there. He wanted to get back for the official visit. So, some particulars on this one, guys, and we'll drop a lot more in depth as we keep going. And I said it wasn't the first. I said this was the second one. Thank you so much. We're at for this visit in particular, Sean. First time in the history that both Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah were on campus together. That had never happened before. Never happened. Nathaniel, first visit in January. Obviously, Jeremiah was not on campus. They had never been on campus together until this weekend. And we saw some of the pictures, obviously. I asked Nathaniel, I had an interview that came out this morning about just the weekend in particular and some of his conversations and how the staff sees him fitting and all those types of things. We talked about Jalen Smith was there, Sean. So you had a couple Buckus Award winners on campus. And I'll leave it like this, folks. I'll leave it like this. They had an opportunity. He had an opportunity to talk to admissions, to advisors, to coaches, to players, to alumni, get the whole scope of what it means to be a Notre Dame football player. Also talk to Al Golden and his staff about how he fits into the defense. The interesting one, Sean. Rover base downs money backer on sub package, which is basically kind of their pass rusher on sub, which is very interesting. Very interesting little note there. So everything went great, though. Everything went great. Got to golf, got to hang out with other commits, got to spend time with Jalen Smith, his brother, everyone. And Sean, I'm going to leave it like this. I had heard, and I put this in a little bit of an early intel yesterday morning, that I had heard from a different source, not directly from Nathaniel, that there was at least conversation this weekend around that he might be moving his decision timeline up. And it's not going to be a December decision or a mid-fall decision. Like there might be a decision coming sooner than that, right? Now, after talking to Nathaniel, I will say this, Sean. That has not been cemented, but it is at least on the brain right now that something could happen much sooner than waiting into the fall. All of that is to say this, Shaun, quite simply. Notre Dame killed this one, bro. Like, I don't think they could have done a better job with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng this weekend. They have vaulted themselves. They were among the leaderboard. They were up at top of the favorites. I think that they are the clear favorites right now for Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. He is going to take a couple more visits, official visits. But if this one ends sometime this summer or early in the fall, I even say early in the fall, I think Notre Dame has positioned themselves to be the clear front runner and clear leader moving forward. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng.
You talk about, we'll dig into the actual visit and some of the things that happened. Let me give you some tidbits that led up to this visit that might support, or that fully support you feeling like Notre Dame's the clear leader. I talked to a couple of people because he was just at USC the previous weekend on his official visit out there. Talked to a couple of people I know that cover the Trojans. And I said, yo, that was kind of petty. I was actually teasing him, like, you guys did the most with the little video with the Ghanaian flag and everything and playing into his culture. And he was like, yo, the staff felt like they had to go that route because they understand how much family means to him. And I said, And they feel like Notre Dame is the clear leader for his services, even after he visited USC. So they tried to play into what they felt like was very important and how they support that. There is a huge Ghanaian community out there in the Los Angeles area. They tried to play into that, which goes into the things that we saw and how Notre Dame set up this visit and hit it out of the park. But they didn't have to do it artificially. It's natural.
Right.
The linebacker royalty. The young man, he was around when he was a younger kid when his brother was here. The vibe in the field that we all heard about, that Notre Dame was family for him. That's what he was telling people the entire time.
He says it every interview, Shaun, whether it's to me or anybody else, that's family over there. He says
that's
it
family.
Word for word every
that's
time.
Family.
Yep.
That's family. And everyone knows that is the obstacle to get over in recruiting this young man. Notre Dame naturally is just family for this young man, and the relationship is what it is. So,
and I'm sure, Shaun, to add into that and let you continue, I'm sure, and I haven't been told this directly, but I'm sure that USC, Ohio State, like what? Actually, I'm not going to accuse staffs of doing this because that would be improper. But I'm sure there has been an attempt to negatively recruit against Notre Dame more than selling your program for Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. Absolutely. Because you said it. Family does mean a lot to him. And clearly he has a legacy and a family allegiance to the University of Notre Dame. Now, that didn't always mean that this was going to trend this direction where you feel really good about where you are with Notre Dame. But I do think that can't be undersold, that you did have to beat family in here if you're any other school. And if somebody does pull off a slight upset, is how I would call it right now, Ohio States of the world, then they are going to have to beat family in this one down the stretch.
Absolutely. And it means a lot. And Notre Dame, they didn't, like I said, they didn't have to artificially create an atmosphere. The atmosphere that they were able to, put together for his official visit was just natural. Like, his brother, who was a Buckets Award winner, playing the same position, accompanied him. It's no more natural official visit that you can get. Notre Dame didn't even have to put that together, I'm sure. Like his brother, while he was at USC, his brother is literally in Africa running a youth camp in his home country of Ghana. Leaves there to get to the United States to be part of the visit to Notre Dame with his younger brother. These are the things that come together for Marcus Freeman and his staff that you're like, this is all a dream. This is all a dream. But I don't want to make it seem like this has been easy. It's not like Notre Dame has just sat back on their laurels and just said, we're family. Notre Dame has done an incredible job. Shout out to Max Bullock. Shout out to Chad Bowden. Max Bullock especially.
Yes.
Shout out to Max Bullock and the work he's put in with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng and the entire staff. It has been a collective. And like you said, things are trending in a tremendous direction for the Fighting Irish right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that Notre Dame has vaulted themselves to the top of the leaderboard. They are the team to beat. Now they'll have to continue that momentum as he checks out a couple other schools, and things can always change. We now know how volatile the recruiting world and
Yeah.
process is at times, but Notre Dame did everything the right way this weekend, Shaun. The fact that they came out of the visit, at least considering moving that decision date up, because he's never mentioned that before. Before this, even before this weekend, he has just talked about fall decision. December decision. Like he had never even talked slightly about maybe a summer decision. He's never talked about it. And the fact that it is at least on the front of his mind or on the back of his mind, wherever the heck he goes in your minds, right? For that type of process. It's big.
Remember, we were talking about this, I believe, 2 weeks ago when we did the
Yeah.
recruiting hour. We were saying, like, we were getting the vibe that him saying a fall decision was really him maybe even overthinking, because the decision felt natural to him. Like almost like Notre Dame is the decision, but I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision.
Very
And
well
that's
thought
why
out.
that's why I'm taking it into the fall. It's like my heart. Do I follow my heart, or do I take this into my mind and make it a decision that's really about everything collectively? And I just think at the end of the day, Notre Dame, from a Hart family standpoint, and the fact that everything else on paper is starting to add up, right? Especially if Notre Dame comes out and wins in 2024.
Right.
That right there is just the icing on the cake. Like, okay, it's a wrap. So I think that's the case for a lot of young men in the 25 class that still might be on the fringes, and kids in the 26 class. If Notre Dame comes out and actually has a successful playoff run at 24, ladies and gentlemen, I know we've been saying it for about a year and a half. Like the way things are buzzing and moving, I'll tell you, even up here in Chicago, I talked to a bunch of guys up here, and they have admitted, like, yo, okay, things are starting to change. Like the buzz is picking up amongst the kids here about Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. You know, and it's just not about what Notre Dame was. Like people actually believe that Notre Dame is starting to become one of those elite programs. And that's even before it manifests itself on the field. So it's just a lot of good things that we're hearing about Notre Dame. And then this is an IMG big time recruit. That is something else I know you want to tap into, Double R.
Me and Shaun literally talked about this on the phone yesterday. So, Shaun, let's talk about like if Notre Dame's able to finish this down the stretch. Because again, Notre Dame leader for Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, in my opinion, right now, trending in a great direction, hopefully moving that timeline up. It's all great news coming out of the weekend. But Shaun, this kid is so important for so many different reasons. Let's state the obvious, right? State the obvious. He's a top 100 level recruit by multiple platforms, rated as high as a top 30 kid by one platform, at a position that you've been continuing to cultivate and to continue to get better. But also, he's a legacy, right? This is a legit high level athletic legacy recruit that you want. You need to get that type of player, right? You need to get that type of player. But what else besides that, Shaun? You mentioned one of them. He's an IMG Academy kid, which Notre Dame's had some success with. I mean, we were talking about it on the board the other day. I mean, they've gotten Robert Hainsey and Tony Jones Jr., and they've gotten a couple good players out of IMG, but it has not been a school that has been consistent in Notre Dame being able to tap into. That's one. What's the other part, though, Shaun? He's not fully an IMG Academy kid. Where's he? Where did he play before this? Played at DeMatha Catholic, my friends.
The DMV,
He is a
baby.
DMV Catholic school kid. The two thorns in Notre Dame's side, consistently getting in to IMG Academy and also breaking in to the DMV Catholic schools. A big one in DeMatha Catholic. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng would be a player that represents not only a high-level legacy, not only a player that you should most of the time always get, but also an IMG kid and a DeMatha Catholic kid, all rolled into one. The importance of getting that type of player, because what does that do, Shaun? It maybe helps to build a pipeline in IMG, but also, you know, he's still got boys in DeMatha. You know, he's still got boys down in Maryland. You know, he's from the state of Virginia originally, so he's from Virginia, went to DeMatha, down to IMG. Those are all areas Notre Dame needs to tap into more, man. This is the ultimate, I don't call it a gateway. That's not the right word, but this is the ultimate high-level football player that can help create pipelines to multiple areas that you need to tap into more, man. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng is very, very important to Notre Dame's 2025 class, in my opinion.
Yeah, and get all the factors you just mentioned just makes you feel like Notre Dame is finally, and this is something that we can give a disclaimer right now to Notre Dame fans, right? For the 26 and 27 class. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to enter into a season of high stakes recruiting. We know you haven't been used to it at Notre Dame. We know you haven't been used to the ride it is. You know, it's an amusement park ride. It is probably one of the highest experiences and lows that you can experience as a fan base. Players are going to tug on your heart. 5-star kids are going to commit. They're going to visit other places. It's going to take you up and down like the best roller coasters in the world. But at the end of the day, it comes down to whether or not your staff is good enough to win along with the current players and whether or not they're good enough to close the deal. That's it. This is what the future of Notre Dame recruiting is going to be. This is it. You asked for it. You begged for it. You begged Marcus Freeman, go after the big fish. Okay, he's going after the big fish. And as they go after the big fish, they're going to go through some things. They're going to have some challenges. But guess what? This staff is full steam ahead, and facing every challenge. They'll win some, they'll lose some. But ultimately, ball on Saturdays is what it's all about at the end of the day. Because even when you get the guys in, you still have to coach them, you still have to develop them, and you have to go win with them. So I'm here for the process, and I hope all of you are bought in and ready for the process moving forward. We're there. We're at that point right now with Notre Dame football recruiting. We're at that point.
It's a great point because I do think that it's not a cautionary tale, but we're just, again, we've talked about this in the past, Shaun, but I think it's an important note to understand that when Notre Dame is upping their recruiting game as far as going after those big fish, quote unquote, right? Those elite level football players, you're going to win. You're going to lose. There's going to be decommitments. There's going to be flips. All those things are going to be a part of the conversation. Georgia loses kids every single year, Shaun, but what do they do if they lose a kid? They go find another really good player. Like, that's how this whole thing works, right? So, yes, I applaud Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman for going after the big fish. We're talking about 2 top 50 linebackers in this class right now in this conversation, and another, Jamir Joseph that we'll talk about in a little bit. He's a top 150 corner that, like, Notre Dame might not even push for. Like, we'll see, right? Like, all those things are very unique to this conversation.
What do we laugh about? What do we laugh about? You're talking about 2 top 50 guys at the same position that Notre Dame could collect in this class. Looks pretty promising right now. And a guy that we both really liked was creating all types of buzz on his official visit to another school this weekend. And we loved the kid, and Notre Dame passed on him.
Yep, Antoine Delorier is who you're talking about. Yeah,
Notre Dame passed, and we're sitting, and we liked them.
Oh, I love Antoine Delorier. That's a great pickup by Syracuse, by the way, man. That's a really good pickup.
We liked them. And we're sitting here saying, oh, that's cool. Like, that's cool. Man, you're creating a lot of buzz. That's what's up. We like you, kids. Much success to you. But we're on these 2 top 50 kids. We're on these top 250 kids. That's where we're at in recruiting. Yeah. That kids that normally 2 years ago, Antoine Delorier would have been a tape. In my opinion. This is my opinion.
And nobody should have been mad about that either, right? Like, he's
absolutely
good,
not.
He's a good player. Yeah.
He's a good, really good player.
Yeah.
But the opportunity to get 2 top 50 linebackers.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I'll pass on. Yeah. No, that's where Notre Dame is. Like, they're at the point where they can pass on really good players.
Mm-hmm.
That could be really good players at Notre Dame. But they're passing on them to say, no, we're going to go get the better. We're going after the big fish. Yeah. This is what we asked for, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. It is 100% what you asked for, right? Like, it is. Yep. And there's always going to be things that frustrates us from the recruiting perspective. You know, maybe we wanted Notre Dame to push for a kid. They chose not to. Maybe they chose to go in a different direction. Maybe they didn't keep a spot open. Like all those things are always in the conversation, right? But you're right, Shaun. In retrospect, right? And this is dependent on Notre Dame landing Owusu-Boateng and Madden Farao. It's dependent upon that. But at the time, I remember talking about, remember when they trimmed the linebacker board? I'm like, man, I don't know if that's a great decision. I don't know if that is, because you're creating such a smaller scope that, like, what if you miss on one or two guys, then you're in trouble? Well, they might know a little bit more than me, I guess, as far as what their chances are with some guys at times, I suppose.
How can I streamline this? Because I don't want to open the door to different conversations. I think collectively, as a school, program, administration, and staff, confidence is building in what they can get done now with their own players currently on the roster and with high school kids. And I'm talking about the elite of the elite. Yep. I think everything has been streamlined in position where Notre Dame feels like, okay, now you've given us permission to go do what others have done illegally for years. Now we can do what we do efficiently in our own way.
Notre Dame from the NIL side can compete against anybody now, right?
Yes.
Like they can. Great point in the chat too, Shaun. Coleman Smith even said, we're to the point where we're fine that we didn't even land Noah McHale. And he's right. Like if you land Madden Farao and Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, no one's going to talk about Noah McHale. No one is going to talk about it, which is crazy to say because that's another top 50 level kid from the state of California that once called Notre Dame his dream school, right? And nobody would be freaking out. They'd just be like, oh, okay, well, look at those guys that we did get, though. Those with Anthony Saka and Josiah Key, it's like, oh, wow, cool, we're good. We're good to go. Let's talk about Madden Farao, Shaun. So, again, great weekend for Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, Notre Dame leader moving forward here. We'll see if they're able to hold on to that momentum, but definitely a leader after this weekend. They're also, Shaun, and they already were. I want to start that phrase here, okay? We're going to J. Sarah Catholic in the state of California. Okay, Shaun? Madden Farao, who is listed between 6'3", 215 to 225, but also I talked to his coach before the visit, and he told me he's up to 235 or 240 right now, Shaun. Like massive kid. I know you saw the pictures circulating of him on Twitter. The big kid, man. Big kid. Very talented. He is rated by Rivals as number 57 overall player in the 2025 class. ESPN has him ranked as number 69 overall player in the class. Top 10 player in the state of California by 3 different services and a consensus 4-star by every major recruiting platform. Ohio State is pushing hard for him. University of Washington, Texas, some others. USC as well is involved in this one. Shaun, there was I think someone put in a future cast or a crystal ball. I don't know which is which. I've talked about that before. I really don't pay attention to that type of stuff. That Notre Dame is the favorite to land Madden Farao. Well, I'm here to tell you guys, again, you can go to boards.irishspring.com, and me and Shaun have been telling you guys, not only in this show, but on the message board for like 5 or 6 weeks. Hey, guys, Notre Dame's the leader for Madden Farao. They're the leader. We're telling you. They have to do great down the stretch. They have to have an impressive visit, but like they're the leader for him. Well, Shaun, that I think was solidified this weekend also. Now, it's a little bit harder to read the Madden Farao recruitments, full transparency, because one, Madden doesn't talk to much media at all, if any. He just doesn't. But I do have a source on his coaching staff, and I will tell you a direct quote. I'll actually read it word for word on a text message here. The text was, 1 second. Here it is. I have never seen Madden this excited. He's a very reserved kid, but he left the visit feeling very good about where things stand with Notre Dame. Direct quote, Shaun. Now, we know this. He's a mild-mannered, very studious kid that doesn't say much. Just that's who Madden Farao is. I talked to Josiah Key, who is the 2025 linebacker commit to Notre Dame, spent a lot of time with Madden because apparently Madden is also of Hawaiian descent as well. So they have that in common. That is something that they hold, very closely to each other. Okay. So that they had that in common. Now, that I think is big, a little bit of that intel and insight into this recruitment because he doesn't get excited much. I think it is a great sign that this kid left kind of giddy about his weekend at Notre Dame and everything that Notre Dame was able to show him. We have been telling you guys, and I'm here to tell you again, Notre Dame was the leader coming into this visit. I think that they have they're putting an exclamation point on this one, in my opinion. Now, again, he's going to take a couple more official visits. It's not like this is I'm telling you all this to be completely transparent here. To my knowledge and to every source I talked to, he didn't silently commit to Notre Dame this weekend. Like, I'm not saying that that is what happened. What I'm telling you, though, is that Notre Dame has set the pulse in this recruitment down the stretch. He is eyeing a summer decision. I got that verified before the weekend. He wants to make a decision before the season. Notre Dame also, Shaun, team to beat for Madden Farao, star 2025 linebacker out of J. Sarah Catholic in the state of California.
This has been like the big tease of the recruiting cycle, right? It's like a kid that Ryan, ladies and gentlemen, this is funny for me when I talk to Ryan about this young man because, started out, he was just totally open, totally open. Ryan makes contact with him. The kid is totally open, talking about Notre Dame. And then all of a sudden just went silent. Just like, yo, what's going on? Right? And then the buzz starts to pick up again, like, oh man, Notre Dame feels like they're in a pretty good position with this kid. Like, really? And now to come to the official visit and to hear that things are trending even greater, I think someone that you spoke to close to the situation said they've never seen the young man like this, right? Because he's very quiet to himself, which kind of lines up with why he went kind of silent after the initial contact.
He's all business. He's like a business-like kid, right? Like he doesn't talk to media much. Honestly, and this is a cool note I got from a different recruit, not just Kia, that at first he was kind of quiet and reserved, right? Like the first couple hours. And then by the end of the weekend, though, it was like he was a part of the family, right? So like he's just one of those kids that I think is just a little bit reserved, needs to kind of feel himself out a little bit, needs to get comfortable. And then he's a little bit more outspoken and that type of thing. But yes, I think that it is a great sign that a young man in Madden Farao who is not like an overly, like he's not a social media guy, Shaun. Like when they dropped his top 4 schools, he didn't even post about it. Like he doesn't care about social media. He doesn't care about the recruiting process. He's trying to find his fit, man.
We need to talk to the kid about marketing now. You got to post your own stuff now. You got to post your own stuff. We have to talk to him about that. But no, just to stay in tune with what you're talking about, this is something that I am in recruiting. I don't even know. We probably could if we did a story like the 4 categories of modern day recruiting, because like recruits could probably fall under like 4 different categories, right? The legacy category, right? And then the NIL kid, the kid that his family and him are just strictly worried about NIL. Like, hey, this is at the forefront. Like relationships are cool and everything, right? But then you get to kids that are like totally open, faith-based, worried about culture and how that's going to impact their beliefs. I think we could do a break, but that is literally everything that comes into recruiting, right? And what you saw this weekend, I think, with the visitors, you saw, in my opinion, 3 to 4 different type of recruits coming to Notre Dame, which shows you the flexibility Notre Dame offers a young man.
Right.
These elite players. Like, it's not like just a one-stop shop, like a maybe school from the SEC, right? They can't give you elite academics. They can't give you other things. They can only give you football, NFL, championships. That's it, which is huge. I'm not trying to minimize that. That's huge.
Yep.
But it just goes to show that when Notre Dame in totality is moving together in unity from administration all the way down, it's a lot of powerful things that can happen. And some great sales that can go, great pitches that can go forth in a lot of different areas.
Shaun, can we talk about real quick There's a question every time a new coach takes over, right? One is how good of a coach are they? Another
Yeah.
question is how good of a recruiter are they? Those are
No.
the two things that you need to know in the college game. I felt great about what Max Bullis showed last year as a de facto, like he was a grad assistant, quote unquote, right? Before he was the full-time linebacker coach that he is now.
Right.
But I felt great about the linebacker growth that we saw last year in their first year under his tutelage. But this offseason, the 2025 class, you're like, all right, well, now we're going to get a direct understanding of Max Bulla, what kind of recruiter he can be. Because 2024, he was a part of the end process, right? The end of finalizing things with Kingston Viliamu-Asa and, just make sure that board is solidified for the 2024 linebacker class in general. But this is our first chance to fully understand how good of a recruiter Max Bulla is. If he lands Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, and because again, let's be honest, Chad Bowden's a part of this, Al Golden's a part of this, Marcus Freeman's a part of this. It's not him by himself, but if his first linebacker group is Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, Madden Farao, Anthony Sacka, and Josiah Keyshawn, that is making a statement with your first class, man. That is saying, hey guys, I'm here. I'm here as a recruiter. And that makes you feel very happy about where things are moving forward. Because, Shaun, one thing that I think we need to talk about a little bit, just briefly, we don't have to get heavy into this, right? But if there is a couple positions that might be struggling on the recruiting side of things, which there always is going to be, no matter what, we always talk about, hey, should Marcus Freeman be helping over there more? Should they be helping, should Chad Bowden be helping over there a little bit more? Should Al Golden be helping over there a little bit more? And so on and so forth. Well, if Max Bullis shows that he can recruit like this, Al Golden doesn't have to spend as much time helping the linebacker recruiting. Marcus Freeman doesn't have to help that much. That's help you best utilize your recruiting staff. And I think that Max Bullis is showing that he can be a big-time recruiter, man, which is it's exciting to see. It's very exciting.
Yo, let Al Golden be the mad scientist. Let him be the mad scientist. Let him do his thing, right? If he wants to actually go out on the road when he has the opportunity, he can come out the lab, let him go. If he wants to stay back and for unofficials and officials, and that's when he makes his presence known, do that. But whatever it is, it seems to be working. Going back to the 23 class up to now, would you take Drake, Jaden, or Nathaniel Madden?
Someone asked this on the board yesterday, Shaun. It was actually about just Nathaniel, but I would put it like this. I would have graded Drake slightly over Madden and Nathaniel, but it would have been a conversation with both. I like all three of those guys a little bit more than I like Jaden Ausberry. I like Jaden Ausberry coming out of high school too. I liked him a lot coming out of the state of Louisiana, but I think those two in 2025 would be graded higher for me than Jaden Ausberry. So it's a question of, do you want 1 and 4 in the group or do you want 2 and 3? Right? Like I kind of pushed to 2 and 3 because, like I said, I don't think the gap between Drake and the other two are that much, right? Like, I don't think they're that much. So I might defer to that 2025 group if Notre Dame's able to land those two. It's a great question though. And if someone says the other one, I wouldn't say a word against it because I think people remember how high I was on Drake Bowen coming out of Andrea, man. I like Drake a whole lot. So yeah.
You throw in the other guys they're getting?
Yeah, like Preston Zinter was in that class too. Who's a good player. You know what I mean? Like, and Shaun, like in a 3-4 year span,
but you would probably take Sacka, right?
Oh, over Preston?
Yeah.
There's a legit argument if you land these two, Shaun, that this is the best linebacker haul that Notre Dame has had in quite a while, man. Like, because that's, look, I would phrase it like this: Nathaniel, top 50 kid, right? Madden Farao, borderline top 50 kid. Then you got Anthony Sacka, who I would say is at least a top 150 kid, if not a top 100 kid. Like, he's really good in my opinion. And then you have Josiah Kia, who is like borderline top 250, but like he's a good player too, man. Like, he has upside that he brings to the table. You know what I mean? It's yeah, that 3-man group, and then when you add in Josiah Kia, it's like that's a great haul potentially. Now Notre Dame needs to close in these guys, Shaun, but to kind of
Absolutely.
wrap up the Madden Farao thing, I'd just like to say this because I don't like to compare a person to person, right? Because I'm a big believer in because I was in teaching for a while, and like every kid needs different type of instruction, and everybody needs different type of teaching, just in general, right? So I don't like to compare kids too closely as far as personalities and that type of thing. Everybody is unique, everybody is different. But there are a lot of parallels that I think you can cross between Madden Farao and Kingston Viliamoasa. It's kind of getting a little creepy, to be honest with you, Shaun. Like a little bit creepy, man. Similar backgrounds as far as where they come from, similar stature, similar, obviously, recruiting rankings and offer lists and all those types of things. And then I start talking to his coach where he's talking about criteria and he's talking about how faith-based he is, right? And how he wants development and how he just is great with relationships and all those types of things. And then, Shaun, the one word that stuck out to me so much when I interviewed anybody about Kingston, right? Anyone. I remember I talked to Jason Negro, who's the head coach over at St. John Bosco. Word he used that stuck out that no one had ever used before to me, as for talking about a recruit, was unicorn. Called him a unicorn. Kingston's a unicorn. He's just different. He's unique. You're never gonna. You just don't find kids like him. Shaun, I interviewed the head coach of J. Sarah Catholic. Okay, what word did he use to describe Madden Farao? He used unicorn, man. Only 2 kids that I've ever had a coach call a unicorn were these 2 kids. And I'm just like, at some point, man, I'm just like, guys, there's a lot of similarities here, man. Like there's a lot of similarities. All that to say is I believe that Notre Dame is the front runner for both Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng and Madden Farao. They have to close down the stretch, Shaun. But man, great weekend for those kids. Now let's talk about the last visitor from this weekend, Shaun, because he's top 150 kid, by the way, by a service, right? Like not a scrub by any chance, because that's his 4-star 2025 Montvale, New Jersey, St. Joseph Regional defensive back, Jamir Joseph, Shaun. Very interesting conversation I actually just had with his former head coach at St. Joseph, okay? So first and foremost, and I wanted to give a couple of these plugs because this article is going to be out pretty soon on Jamir Joseph. Shaun, apparently this is a young man that didn't care about taking visits early in his recruiting process. He's being recruited heavily for 2 years, and he just didn't go on visits. Just like, I'm just going to let chips fall, build relationships, and then take official visits. That's basically what Jamir Joseph has been wanting to do. That's basically been his full process here, okay? So, which is why June is going to be so important for him. He already visited Stanford. He visited Notre Dame. He still has Penn State and South Carolina that he's going to take over the next couple of weeks as well. Just very unique process. And the coach obviously spoke rave reviews about Jamir Joseph. Now, here's the intel from both sides, Shaun. On the Jamir Joseph side from sources, okay, visit went very well. Very good visit. Notre Dame is very much in this one. They are possibly the leader, but they are a team that is going to be in it until the end if they want to be. Okay, that's kind of the Jamir Joseph side. From the Notre Dame side from sources now that we've gathered, here's where things are. Notre Dame thinks that they did very well this weekend as well. He does, and Jamir has been honest about this from the beginning. He wants to take all his officials. So Notre Dame was very like, okay, go take your officials. Then we'll talk at that time and we'll see what the decision-making process looks like and we'll move forward from there, right? Now, Shaun, I actually think that's beneficial for Notre Dame. It's beneficial for a couple different reasons. One, you're in a pretty good spot with Jamir Joseph, first and foremost. 2, who's coming on Tuesday, Shaun? Who's coming for a visit on Tuesday?
This kid from the East Coast, Jersey area, last name Blair. I think his first name is Jaden
Blair, star safety. And we'll talk about him in the next section here, okay? But North Carolina safety, Jaden Blair, will be here for his official midweek. Also coming this weekend is star safety Ivan Taylor, who has been committed to Notre Dame, but we know obviously with the taking an official visit to Alabama last week. His future is a little bit up in the air right now. Kind of latest there that we put on the message board for you guys is Notre Dame is treating Ivan Taylor as a not committed player right now. Like they're basically recruiting him from not from scratch, but they're re-recruiting him at this point, getting him on official visit. We'll see if they're able to get a recommitment from him and to move forward that way. That's kind of the latest there, but he is still planning on taking his visit next weekend. Shaun, that means that you potentially probably have 2 spots open and you got your 3 big targets at defensive back on the board. Because I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but Dalen Penson, the nickelback athletes out of the state of Georgia, committed to Georgia Tech. So off the board, Dalen Penson. He's not an option anymore. You potentially have 2 spots left. Okay, you have 2 spots left. The next few days, you are going to have a window to see all 3 of those players. You already saw Jamir. You're going to see Jaden for his official. You're going to see Ivan Taylor for his official. Depending on where things go with Ivan, it could make a potential push very easy, right? Very easy. But regardless, Notre Dame has options on the board. They are the leader right now for Jaden Blair. We'll go a little bit more in depth with in the second section. They are among the leaders, if not the leader, for Jamir Joseph, potentially moving forward if they choose to push for him. And we're going to see what happens with Ivan Taylor this weekend because that's up in the air at this point. We really have no idea what 100% to make of it. But regardless, Shaun, after this weekend, I think we'll have very good understanding as far as what this defensive backboard can look like for Notre Dame because we'll have seen all of those players in a short window of opportunity here.
Yeah. And I think full understanding of this situation is that big picture, can we be encouraging right now? Notre Dame is going to get a couple of these kids. Like some people are running around acting like Notre Dame is about to strike out. Just strike out and forget the kids that are still committed in the class. It's almost like, yo, this is what being on the big boy ride of elite college football recruiting is like. We haven't been used to it, but get used to it, which means we should have control over our emotions and let things play out, right? Because ultimately, nothing you can do when the decision is not in your hand. It's in the hands of the coaching staff, and then they have to wait to see what the player and their family say. Ultimately, that's it. That's it. So as far as Jamir Joseph, that is a situation where I remember last week I said if I were Jamir Joseph's dad, I would have a list of questions that I would be asking. What's up with this player? Where do we exactly stand? Right? Yeah, because we love Notre Dame, but I want to know truthfully where we stand so I can leave the visit saying, yo, going into other visits, we know. And I expect Notre Dame, I'm sure they did have questions for the Notre Dame staff, and Notre Dame staff has been known across the recruiting world for being very honest.
Very honest.
It's a very honest coaching staff.
And Shaun, I don't want to say burned because like honesty is great, right? But like there's probably been a couple situations over the last couple of years where you're just like, if you weren't honest, that might have actually played out better for you in the end. But regardless, it doesn't matter, right? Like it didn't matter. I mean, it is quite literally a situation where one thing that people revere Marcus Freeman for, revere Dylan McCullough for, and a bunch of other staff members for Notre Dame is their honesty with these kids, right? Like they're honest.
And you have to be, right? Yes. Especially if you're starting to lay the foundation or you're in the foundational stages of laying your program.
Yep. Shaun, literally this offseason, okay? This offseason, Notre Dame was in a position where people keep asking about the 85 scholarship limit. You know why, Shaun? Kids don't want to leave for the most part. Think about that. Think about that, guys. Think about that for a second. There is literally a question of scholarships, which will be taken care of, and that'll stuff all be figured out. Don't worry. Nothing's going to happen with that, right? But there was literally a situation, Shaun, where kids love the honesty and the world of Notre Dame so much that they don't want to leave, Shaun. They don't want to leave. That is literally a problem that you're dealing with. Think about that. Calling the fact that kids don't want to leave a program a problem. That's wild to think about. Absolutely wild to think about.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild to think about. And just going back to what we were talking about, whether it be Jamir Joseph, whether it be, the Taylor situation and his visit, him
Yep.
on IG with Ryan Williams, 25 committed wide receiver, number one player in the class, and all of that, and people buzzing about that. At the end of the day, he's coming to South Bend, as far as we know. So, regardless of everything that's been said, regardless of how Notre Dame is approaching the recruitment now, none of that makes a difference. What Notre Dame is able to do, if the young man gets to South Bend for his official visit, which we expect him to do at this point,
he's
it
verified
is what
with he's verified with the staff already that he's still coming on the official, right? So I mean, as of today, he's still coming to South
that's
Bend this
it.
weekend.
Doesn't matter. They would have to put forth the same amount of effort, or they would have been wise to recruit him just as hard if he was still committed and had not visited Alabama. Because guess what? Alabama was going to keep coming. Georgia's going to keep coming.
Yep.
Until December.
Absolutely.
Like, you're not going to, once again, Notre Dame doesn't have the luxury to sit back on their laurels like at Alabama and Georgia. They don't have that luxury.
Well, and
so
Shaun,
this
I would
doesn't
say
change. Yeah. This doesn't change how you recruit a top 50 kid. He's a top 50 kid. Until he signs on the dot, you go hard in the paint.
Yep. And there's some kids, Shaun, that if they would have taken an official visit, because Notre Dame is always going to treat them all the same, right? Mm-hmm. Kid takes an official visit, we don't consider you committed anymore. We have to keep recruiting you, and then we'll see if we can get a recommitment from you at that point, right? But I would also say this, Shaun, there's some kids that if they did that, they would just be like, we're good. Like Notre Dame has done that in the past. Like Jaden Lamar close to signing day. Yeah, Jaden Lamar close to signing day, Shaun, was like, I want to take a visit to Oregon, right? Like real close to signing day. And Notre Dame was basically like, okay, see ya. Like, we don't have time for this. Like, if you don't want to play, you don't want to play. Like, just straight up, right? So they stopped recruiting him. They basically cut ties at that point. Notre Dame has done that in the past. But I think the key here is that Notre Dame wants to make this work with Ivan Taylor. They do. He's a player that they value tremendously. But that also being said, Shaun, because everybody knows how high I am on Ivan Taylor, right? Great player. I think he's a really good kid, and he comes from a great family. I've gotten to know that family, and I really like the Taylor family. No doubt about it. But I will say this, Shaun. If they don't end up with Ivan Taylor, if he decides to go elsewhere, and you land Jaden Blair and Jamir Joseph down the stretch, you know what that still is, Shaun? Still an elite secondary class, sir. It's still an elite secondary class. No doubt about it. The key here is Jamir Joseph this weekend for me was Notre Dame did so well with him and is continuing to recruit him well that they have options. They have options, man. They have options. We've been talking about this all
what Shaun, type of options, Ryan? What type of options?
Consensus 4-star, top 150 options, right? Like, again, this kid is, and I forget what his exact ranking was, but Jamir Joseph ranked in the top 150, Shaun. He's got offers from Georgia, Penn State. He's taking an official of South Carolina. Like, he's got options, man. He's got lots of options. And Notre Dame could say at the end, this is the reality. Notre Dame in the end could be like, Jamir, we really like you. And they do really like him, by the way. Really like him as a player. But they might not have a spot for him. Dalen Penson, who was just on campus, Shaun, basically he left after the Irish invasion as a top 150 kid by multiple platforms. And they basically said, like, we're going to try to make a spot for you, but like, there's no guarantee. That's basically what just happened. Think about that. This is the world of recruiting you want to be in, where you can turn down potentially great football players and be like, sorry, we just don't have a spot, man. We just don't have a spot. So Notre Dame has options on the defensive back board, which is kind of the point of this conversation. It's the point.
That's it. There's nothing else to be said.
I love it, man. I love
nothing else to be said.
Big weekend this past weekend from the Irish. Folks, we're going to have midweek visits officially this week. Also, we're going to talk about a couple kids that are going to be visiting this week that are not officials. They're 2026, 2027 kids. So we'll be talking about that as well. And then we'll be previewing this weekend's visitors later in the week. I'll be doing that with Sean Stiers. And of course, we'll be having Brian Smith on here soon as well. Smitty's going to be breaking down Deuce Knight's performance at OT7 down in the state of Florida. He was live there to watch Mr. Deuce Knight. So we will talk about all that. We're going to get into the visitors this week, previewing some of that. Before we do, though, make sure for us, if you can, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hit the notification bell. If you're listening to us on YouTube, hit that, hit all that, but also leave a comment below because that also helps the algorithm. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or anything in between, 5-star reviews. Make sure you also leave some candid conversation there, right? Tell everyone how much you love Shaun and Ryan and the recruiting hour every Monday afternoon. BorrisIrishBreakdown.com. You would have known about all this intel we just dropped to you all. Spent 55 minutes talking about all that. And you could add all that at BorrisIrishBreakdown.com over the weekend. We're going to preview some important visitors to Notre Dame this weekend, folks, next year on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Shaun, it is another important week for Notre Dame on the recruiting side. We're going to talk about some official visitors, 3 of them that are coming on Tuesday and will be there till Thursday. We're also going to be talking about some very intriguing 2026 and a 2027 kid that is going to be actually there's a camp today. Notre Dame is working out some players, so there's some kids on campus today, and we're going to be talking about all those players. But let's start with the official visitors, Shaun, because we just spent a lot of time talking about one in the first segment, okay? Let's talk about official visitor on Tuesday, 2025, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mount Tabor safety, Jaden Blair, Shaun, who I actually have at irishbreakdown.com. I have a visitor preview for him as well, okay? I have a visitor preview, just talking a little bit about where Notre Dame stands going into the visit. The great thing about Jaden, Shaun, is that we know when he's going to commit. We know July 5th is the day that he is going to commit. That is his birthday. Still crazy to think that he's only turning 17 years old. That is absolutely wild to me. He will literally, if he chooses Notre Dame, when he is enrolled for several months, because I believe he is an early enrollee at Notre Dame, potentially, if he does choose them, he will only be 17 years old until the middle of summer, which is pretty wild to think about. But let's talk about Jaden Blair, Shaun. This is going to be a huge one going into this week. Okay, so he's getting here on Tuesday. He'll be here to Thursday, official visit. 6'4", 190 pounds, elite player, in my opinion. Absolute elite player. Coming into the visit, Shaun, I believe that Notre Dame is by far the leader. Like, just I don't think the gap is even that close to number 2, right? Now, there's some debate out there of who number 2 is. We know it's a Big Ten school. Some people think it's Penn State. Others think it's Michigan. Whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you, though, my latest is I think Notre Dame is absolutely the team to beat. And I think they've created a big gap. Unless Notre Dame fumbles this one, Shaun, down the stretch and does something just dumb and doesn't make any sense, a bad decision or whatever, I find it hard to believe that anybody's going to edge Notre Dame out. That's what's on the line this week, Shaun. You have a chance because as of today, there is a plan for the Blair family to take their last couple officials as well. So this will not be the last official visit to Notre Dame, okay, or to a school. But Shaun, I mean, look, I don't want to lie to anybody out there. Notre Dame is the team to beat. I think that as long as they maintain momentum and they don't bumble this thing down the stretch, Jaden Blair is theirs. I truly do, man. I think that they have all the opportunity down the stretch here, obviously in this official visit, to solidify everything with Jaden Blair.
I think it's something that's very similar to what we have heard. I don't know necessarily how truthful that might be in one situation, but the similarity of the departure of Chris O'Leary with Jaden Blair and also Ivan Taylor has been mentioned and brought up. I think both parties mentioning that with Jaden Blair, he felt like it was very real. Mike Mickens becomes the new defensive back coach, and now the relationship that they built. And I think, with you talking to him, and I think, we've also heard from his dad and other sources close to the situation that they have a great amount of respect for Mike Mickens and the job he's done while at Notre Dame. So that bodes well. And ultimately, how you're feeling about Notre Dame being the leader for one Jaden Blair. Yep. I also think that his recruitment has been one of the most timely things because I think Chris O'Leary leaving left enough space and time to where it's that relationship between him and his dad and the family and Mike Mickens to be reestablished and strengthened and to answer the questions that needed to be answered. Also,
it's a great
one
point.
of the
Great
things
point,
that
by
I
the way.
think was a great impact, I don't know if a lot of people watched Deuce Knight when he was at the Elite showcase a couple of weeks ago. He was very straightforward. This is amazing. He was very straightforward, which is why I love Deuce Knight. Are you down here, talking to anybody? Yeah. Jaden Blair. Yep.
Oh, well, did I tell you that his dad literally he texted me the picture of Jaden and Deuce together, and I put the picture on the board at boardsirishrecruiting.com. I don't know if that ever got posted on Twitter, but yeah, man. Yeah. No, he was recruiting Jaden down there. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So things have been trending in the right direction, right? And I think initially the feedback we got was, yes, the departure of Chris O'Leary, that it means something. It does. But kudos to Notre Dame, right? And if they've done it before, who's to say they can't do it again with Ivan Taylor on this official visit, right? Who says they can't come away with that visit making us feel like that Notre Dame is back in business with Ivan Taylor? This is why you have to just enjoy the ride, man. Just enjoy the ups and downs. We went through a down period with Jaden Blair. Nobody's really even thinking about that right now. Nobody even wants to reference back to that point to say, oh, man, immediately after the departure of Chris O'Leary, I don't know, we thought things might get shaky. But now we sit right here with his July 5th decision approaching, and we both sit here saying, yeah, seems like Notre Dame might be getting one of the best players in the entire 2025 class. That says a lot.
It does. It does. I mean, Shaun, I've said this before, and I truly believe this. I think that because Dallas Golden to me is a stud. Like Dallas Golden, I think is a borderline 5-star in my opinion, not opinion of a couple other platforms, just my opinion in general.
Yeah,
I think there is a great conversation of who's the top overall recruit in the class if they land Jaden Blair. I think there's a conversation. Like someone could argue Dallas. Some could argue Blair. I think some could argue Deuce. Like there's arguments. I mean, some people would even argue Will Black. I mean, somebody has him rated as a top 10 overall player in the class, right? So that all is to say that I think that you have a elite player coming this week, man, an elite football player. There's a lot of safeties are going to be compared over the next couple of years and already have been to Kyle Hamilton. That's going to be a name that we're going to hear in the Notre Dame recruiting world because it's an easy pitch, right? Hey guys, come be the next Kyle Hamilton. Cool. Jaden Blair actually has a little bit of that, Shaun. Like he's 6'4", 190 pounds. Like I actually think that he measured 6'4.5" or something like that, man. Like wild down at that On3 showcase, On3 Elite. So yeah, man, I'm so high on that kid. I think that he would be a great fit as well. I mean, if he literally came on this podcast before, Shaun, and I would say just like simply with Jaden, I think that he is a very Notre Dame kid. Very Notre Dame kid. I think his family is very Notre Dame family-esque. I think that would be a tremendous fit. So we shall see where the chips lie, but yes, feel good about where things are with Jaden Blair going into that visit. Shaun, another kid that we actually just had the opportunity to interview, which will be on Irish Breakdown soon on the channel. I don't know when exactly it's going to drop, but we had the opportunity to sit down with 2025 Fishers, Indiana high school wide receiver John Anthony Hall. First and foremost, Shaun, I really like the interview, man. Just to pump it up a little bit for when it gets out into the universe a little bit, right? But very impressive kid is the best way I phrase it. Very impressive kid.
Very composed young man. And I really love digging into his background. I forget which service academy his dad was in. Was he in the Marines? If I'm not mistaken, because I don't want to say the wrong one.
I don't think he actually said it specifically in the interview. He just said he was in the military.
He was a military kid. Military kid. And, anytime you get military kid, you understand that fits with Notre Dame because you talk about order, discipline, and the values that represent Notre Dame very much connected to the military. So, he sounds like a perfect fit. Underrated kid. underrated
Yes.
kid. And I came away thinking that he wants to be an elevator, a person that can come in and raise the expectations based upon how he goes about his business and the way he performs on the field. You talked about it. He took a tremendous step in
Oh
production
yeah.
from his
Oh yeah.
sophomore year to his junior year. It was like, whoa, what happened? And you asked him about that. So once again, can't wait for that interview to drop. Great interview, great young man. Man,
Yeah.
I would not mind him being added to this class at all at the wide
Yeah.
receiver position.
Well, a little bit of insight, and people will hear the interview, but I so here's a little bit of insight into the background for John Anthony Hall, though, Shaun, because I think it's a really important note. 3-sport kid, basketball, football, and track. He said basketball came first for him,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a
Yeah.
sophomore, he only had 11 catches for like 260 something yards for Fishers, but he had a scholarship offer at that point from Akron, and he's literally said it, Shaun. He was like, I hadn't even really tried a football at that point, and then I got a Division I scholarship offer, and I was like, oh, maybe that's what I should do. Like
Yeah.
maybe that's the best route. So then he took it seriously, right? That off season. And he went from 11 catches to 260 something yards to 69 receptions for 1,055 yards as a junior, Shaun. Massive improvement from production from a sophomore to junior year. And some people have him ranked super high. I think someone just said 247 Sports has him ranked as number 52 overall player in the class. There's another platform that has him ranked as a 4-star and a top 250 kid. There's 2 others that have a 3-star billing on him. So the rankings are all over the place on John Anthony Hall. But very simply, Shaun, the minute that he was offered on May 31st and set up a visit almost simultaneously, you
Yeah.
gotta like Notre Dame's chances to land him. I mean, like let's
Oh,
be honest
absolutely.
about that, right? Like let's not
Absolutely.
skate around that. You feel good about Notre Dame's chances. There's a few wide receivers that are still left on the board. There could be a couple different combinations, but certainly you feel like Notre Dame is going to be in a very good spot with John Anthony Hall in the end.
And we literally interviewed him the day before his official visit to Stanford.
Yes.
Right?
Took some time
Which,
out of his day that night he was going to Stanford. Yeah. Yeah.
which is absolutely amazing to get him right before he went on that visit. But when I asked him about his travels, because he's been a lot of places, being a military kid, he flat out said, "What? I'm a Hoosier.
He did
Hey,
say
I'm
that.
an Indiana kid." You
Because
know,
he spent some time in Illinois. He spent some
yeah,
time in Maryland, I
Hawaii,
believe, was it
Maryland,
right? In
yeah,
Hawaii. Yeah, man, he's been all over the place.
yeah.
Very
So he
interesting
was
guy.
flat out said, "Yo, I'm definitely a huge Hoosier kid. I'm an Indiana kid. That bodes well for Notre Dame, in my opinion."
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. So John Anthony Hall, wide receivers, Fishers, Indiana, 2025, visiting Notre Dame on Tuesday through Thursday for an official visit. He also, so he just went to Stanford, like you mentioned, Shaun. His other 2 were Indiana and Purdue, I believe was the
Mm-hmm.
last 2 official visits for him. So we'll know something. He's also eyeing a summer decision. So he said somewhere July, August, he wants to make a commitment. He doesn't want to go into the fall with a
Yeah.
commitment on his mind. So yes, we will know about that one pretty soon. Last official visitor, Shaun, coming on Tuesday, 2025, Laverne, California, Bonita wide receiver, Dylan Robinson, teammate of Noah McHale, who we know very well at this point, even though he's not going to end up at Notre Dame. Dylan Robinson, Shaun, 6'3", 190 pounds, has timed in the high 4.4s between like 4.46 and 4.49 at camps over the last year or so. This kid could play wide receiver, which is where Notre Dame's recruiting him. Could also play corner, could play safety. I like Dylan Robinson a lot. Notre Dame heads into this visit, I think, in a good place. They're a little bit late to the party, but I think with a big visit, Shaun, that they could vault themselves to being the absolute leader for Dylan Robinson going down the stretch.
I'm going to give you something from a baseball standpoint, then I'm going to let you rock out the way you
Do it.
do, because you're the best at it, Double R. I stand there and I play baseball, right? And we would be at these tournaments, and a kid would throw a pitch, and I'm standing there watching him warm up because I'm the next guy up. And I would look out to the board to see, what the speed is, right? And this is just going back to high school, so this doesn't equate. But you go back to high school, and the speed would be like 84, or his fastball is 84. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I got this dude. And then I was standing in the box, and I didn't see 84. It didn't matter what the radar said. It matters how it looks to me. Because to me, it looks like 88, 89 for whatever reason. It's a lot of contributaries to that for why that comes across to the eyes of the hitter. But
Right.
that's all that matters. So when we start talking about 40 times, right? People get so caught up. This kid runs a 4.3. This kid runs a 4.4. Yeah, if he runs a 4.49, but to the DB, it comes across as a 4.4 flat. That's all that matters.
Deceptive.
The footwork,
Deception.
the deceptive. Yes.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. And we can get so caught up in times that we forget, can the kid play football? When you watch his film, do you see separation? Like, because that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if he's creating separation at 4.53 or 4.55. Do you have separation? Because we've seen tons of kids that clock at 4.3, and then we look at the film and say, "Yo, why isn't he separated?"
Right. It's a great question. Yeah.
You do it all the time with NFL guys. Or guys trying to go to the NFL, like, yeah, he runs a 4.4 flat, but he can't get separation.
Doesn't get open. Denzel Mims was one of those guys for me, Shaun. They got drafted by the Jets out of Baylor. Oh man, the kid ran a 4.37. I'm like, where is it on film though? Like, I don't see it. Like, I don't see it.
It's so crazy. I never forget the first practice this spring. I'm sitting there and I'm watching Cam Williams, and he runs a post, and I'm like, and the dude literally puts it. He's not even by the defensive back. He's getting ready to pass the defensive back and immediately throws his hands up. And I'm like, okay. And by the time the ball gets there, it's like 5-yard separation. I'm like, okay. That is what I'm talking about. I don't care how fast he was running. I don't care what his 40 time is. I consistently see that he can create separation. Same thing with Jaden Greathouse. Jaden Greathouse probably runs like what, 4.5?
Maybe 4.4. Maybe 4.5 something. He might be a 4.6 guy. Like, yeah, he's not fast.
But he always creates separation. You saw it on film as a youngster. You saw it on film as a senior. You're seeing it at Notre Dame. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't look, man. It's the job of Mike Brown and this staff to find guys that can create separation and do something with the ball after they catch it. That's what I see in their evaluation. And Robinson, I know people want the big kids that everyone talks about. I'm cool. Give me Robinson in this class. I'll take him in a heartbeat.
He's so important too, Shaun, because I think you make a great point. He's long-legged, so I think it kind of takes you off guard with the speed. You're like, you kind of get lulled to sleep a little bit because of that stride length, and then all of a sudden he opens up, and you're like, oh, okay, he can run a little bit. So that's important, but I think the most important part of it, Shaun, is that we've kind of been talking about this for a couple months though, and we don't feel good about where things are with Derek Meadows. I'll talk about Derek Meadows on the show tomorrow because him and Tanuk Hines will both be on campus over the weekend for their official visits. But with Derek Meadows probably not being more than likely in play for Notre Dame, you need to find someone who can play outside and can stretch the field vertically. You need to find that guy. And Elijah Burris, I don't think is that guy. He's the route runner dude, right? He's the guy that's going to be a short to intermediate separator. That's more of his game. Jerome Bettis is a catch point guy. That's his best trait. He's physical, right? If you get to Tanuk Hines, he's more of your field separator, right? Like he's fast, but he's more of a field guy because he's not the biggest framed dude of all time. John Anthony Hall is similar-ish to Elijah Burris in that I think his speed's fine, but he's also more of a route runner separator, not a vertically oriented dude. Robinson is much more in the Derek Meadows vein of 6'3", length, and can run vertically, can play into the boundary. That's more of what he brings to the table. And Shaun, if you're not going to get Derek Meadows, you need to get Dylan Robinson, man, because they are the same. Look, they're not the same exact style of player, but they fill the same role on a football team. And you need to find that role, a guy that can play into the boundary and can win outside with speed and explosiveness and length. You need to find that guy. And I think that he fits that.
He fits that. And I think we both said, if you get him and Tanuk in the class, you don't have to shed a tear over anyone else that you might not have gotten in the class at all. Because look, Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we frowned upon is recruitment and development at wide receiver and quarterback. A lot of people will say that's what's held Notre Dame back from winning championships. Those two areas offensively.
They would. Yep.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, because we'll have a great debate next Monday, Shaun, because obviously we'll have a lot of intel about not only the two wide receivers we're talking about, but also Derek Meadows would have been on campus, Tanu Kynes would have been on campus. So we'll have a lot more understanding of the wide receiver class after this week. So
Yeah.
keep an eye on Dylan Robinson. Feel good about where that one's trending. Think that John Anthony Hall is going to be a tough one for anyone to beat Notre Dame at this point, barring some catastrophic changes over the next few weeks. But John Anthony Hall, Dylan Robinson, and elite safety Jaden Blair, 2025 class, visiting Notre Dame on Tuesday through Thursday of this week for official visits. Shaun, official visits aren't the only thing this week, though. Literally today, there are recruits on campus, Shaun. I want to talk about one right now. Okay. I want to talk about one of my favorite players in the 2026 recruiting class. When we did our show on players that Notre Dame could possibly push for with the commitments of Noah Grubbs at the time, I brought this kid up, Shaun, and he's making a 2-day visit to Notre Dame starting today on Monday. 2026, Purcellville, Virginia, Woodgrove, wide receiver Connor Salmon. Shaun, 6'1", 190 pounds, big time offer list. He's got guys like Georgia, Clemson, obviously Notre Dame in the mix early on. Just won a state championship, Shaun, as a sophomore. Ran 10.44 in the 100 meters. Pretty good, man. Also ran like 21.18, I believe, in the 200. Like, this kid is a legit, could run track at a high level in college more than likely if he progresses the same. Because 10.44 as a sophomore is blazing, man. We remember talking about Micah Bell, Shaun. Remember Micah Bell? Micah Bell ran 10.42, I think, as a senior in high school.
Right.
We're talking about a sophomore that ran 10.44. This is a legit 4.4 something athlete, maybe 4.3 something athlete right now. Connor Salmon had 50 something receptions, over 1,100 yards last year. Also had 4 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball, 16 touchdowns, Shaun. First visit to campus Notre Dame, and it's a 2-day visit, which I love to hear. Getting one of the speediest, most athletic wide receivers in 2026 on campus.
Makes sense. And I think it shows that, if you're patient with Mike Brown, understanding the transition, understanding the focus that he had to do to close out the best he could in the 25 class, the continuing evaluation that was going to take. And now you're questioning, some people might question, man, can he get the elite kids? Well, this young man is going to be an elite kid. He's already an elite kid. Look at the offer list, look at his talent, look at his film, look at his times. And the production is there.
Yes.
The production's already there. So, I mean, I don't, otherwise now, if he wanted to commit on this visit,
I take him. I take him.
Absolutely.
I don't know if Notre Dame, I don't know enough about Notre Dame's feeling on him to say that they would definitely do that. But like, if that kid, if 10.4 wanted to commit to me, I'd be like, yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. Let's get it done. Take it. The film, the production, it's all there.
Yeah, no, it really is. So Connor Salmon, 2-day visit coming up here soon, folks. Very interesting. Also, Shaun, 4.2 GPA kid, 4.2 GPA through 2 years of high school as well. So not only a elite athletes, also a elite students in the high school level. So yes, camping today at Notre Dame, Shaun, arguably the top 2027 quarterback out there. Huntington Beach, California, quarterback Brady Edmonds, Shaun, 6'5", 200 pounds, threw for over 2,600 yards last year, 24 touchdown passes, okay? Offers, just finished up his freshman years. Offers already from Arizona State, Arkansas, Auburn, Boston College, Florida State, Michigan, Louisville, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Texas, Virginia Tech, Washington State, as a kid that has not even played his sophomore year, Shaun, hasn't even played. Notre Dame's getting a big-time quarterback on campus, man. We've already seen a few already. Guys like Trey Taylor, who visited for Irish Invasion. Notre Dame gets their look firsthand at arguably the top passer in 2027 in Brady Edmonds.
In the words of my co-host, we on 27 quarterbacks already? And I had to tell him, yes, Left, we're on 27 quarterbacks already because 25 and 26 are locked in.
Yes.
And that's a wonderful thing. That's an absolutely amazing thing. You know what that means? Hopefully by the time we're sending out the pot of gold next year,
Yeah,
the face of the class will be there. It's a possibility. The
at least
face of
by
the
Irish
20s guy.
invasion. At least by Irish invasion. Let's say Irish invasion instead of pot
I'm
of gold.
saying,
I don't
look,
know.
I mean, that's only what, 2 months? That's 2
Yeah.
months. And look, I'll say this. That's probably
Mhm.
127 kid that would fit the bill of being an early commitment if everything goes right on film this fall. I mean, that works both ways because the staff would have to feel the same way. But either way, yeah, the evaluation is there, but we're going to continue to see young men added to the board. That is the beautiful part.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
that's the beautiful part. And just excited to hear the buzz and the feedback from this young man's visit to camp and camping at Notre Dame on today.
So Brady Edmonds camping at Notre Dame. We will see how that. I mean, we'll see if he gets an offer, Sean. I mean, you never know. I know they've been telling quarterbacks that they want to wait until they see sophomore film, so maybe an offer won't come. But this type of kid that's got 20 something offers already, though,
Yeah.
some people are exceptions to the rules at times. We'll see. We'll see if it is or not. Other 2026 player that's going to be on campus today, Sean, camping at Notre Dame. 2026 is Mount Zion, Illinois high school tight end, JC Anderson, all 6'7", 230, 235 pounds of him, Sean. I know he's a player you like. I think it's big for Notre Dame to be able to get him on campus and see him move in person. I think that would be big for JC.
And his visits, I believe he just came from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. He's picking up steam. When we first talked to the young man, it was obvious that Notre Dame was interested, but there was some other talented tight ends, that they were also interested in when he received his offer. So it's just a wait and see. I know it was a big time, the Illinois staff. The Houston Griffith, he's over the recruiting down there. He's going after JC Anderson really hard. Really hard. So you get all
JC, by the way, Sean, on the 247 composite rate is number 124 overall player, number 6 tight end in the 2026 class, for some context there.
And like Notre Dame fan said, yeah, he is all of 6'7", 260. All of
huge,
it, every bit. Huge kid. And like you said, you look at his time, he probably won't time well. But he's the type of kid you put on the stem, you're like, yo, he's running away from kids. He's coming across.
Say the name that you said the first time we
Cal
were talking
Rudolph,
about him,
man. He's Cal Rudolph, yo.
I can see
He's
it.
Cal Rudolph. He is Cal Rudolph. Moves like him, built like him. He's absolutely Cal Rudolph, in my opinion.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Because again, Sean, Notre Dame's on a couple very talented tight ends. Brock Harris just visited, who's a potentially elite player out of the state of Utah that just visited Notre Dame. Had a lot of good things to say about Notre Dame and their early relationship there. But JC is no slouch, man. He's very talented. He's in your backyard. Is he a guy you want? I think that seeing him live in person, if he impresses, see what happens, man. Could be a guy that you push for potentially.
Coleman Smith joked he could be an offensive tackle. You're probably right. He probably could very well be an offensive tackle.
Who knows? I mean, 230 something already at 6'7". I mean, yeah, he's got plenty of room to grow.
Lou Holtz was known for getting the athletic tackle and just making him a tight end and making him a tackle. He was known for it.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go to the last guy, Sean, here that's going to be visiting, and then we're going to get Brian Smith on the podcast as well. We got 2026 Bradenton, Florida, IMG Academy defensive lineman Elijah Golden that's going to come to campus, Sean. Rated as high by 247 Sports as number 18 overall player in the class, number 2 defensive lineman. Now, fascinating, just a little bit quick backstory. And just, again, this is going to be a second visit to Notre Dame this offseason. So obviously there is clear interest from Elijah Golden. There's no question about that. Sean, he is originally, though, from the state of Virginia, came to IMG before this past season and was on. So IMG has like their 2, I forget what the labels are, but basically they have the blue and the white squad, I believe, is like the varsity level, right? And then they have the one under it's like the national team, right? Elijah was actually on the national team last year. He wasn't a part of technically the varsity level. Despite that, though, he's got offers from Notre Dame, Florida, Duke, Indiana. He's got Maryland, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Virginia Tech. I know he's camping at Ohio State pretty soon too, so we'll see if something happens there. Very high upside kid that just hasn't played a ton, but man, he's been working his butt off this offseason down in Virginia, perfecting his craft up to around 270 pounds now at this point. So Notre Dame got on him early. Could be a massive riser. Just curious to see because he'll be on campus on the 12th, which I believe is Wednesday, right? Yep. So Elijah Golden will be returning on Wednesday. Make sure to keep an eye on Elijah Golden. Folks, that's this week. I'm going to preview the weekend's visitor tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk. We're going to bring Brian Smith on, though, here in a second. Before we do, if you could please just do us a solid, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you also hit that notification bell for know when a next show is coming up, whether that is Irish Breakdown Podcast or that is IB Nation Sports Talk. You can also listen to us on any and all of your favorite podcast platforms. So please, if you can, we really appreciate it. Subscribe over there. Leave a 5-star review. Boards at irishbreakdown.com. You're going to have recruiting intel this week. You're going to have recruiting intel over the weekend. A lot more great information coming soon here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. This adaptation, though, of course, is the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. Shawnee, you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Every time we bring Brian Smith on, one of the best guests we bring on pretty consistently here at FB Scout _Florida, editor of All Hurricanes and recruiting analyst of Auburn Daily. I also just saw that he's on the Locked On Podcast Network, I believe. I think he has a show over there now. I did peek that for a split second. We'll let him talk about that as well. Bringing Brian Smith on, who is our resident SEC Florida guy. He covers everything down in the Southeast. Brian, welcome back, man. How are you?
Doing well, sir. It's a little steamy down here in the South. I can assure you of that.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's like 80 degrees in New Jersey right now, so I can't imagine what it is down there right now. I actually can't imagine.
That's like an ice cube. So.
Shaun, what is it in Illinois right now? What's it?
You don't even want to know, bro. We got cicadas and 69 degrees. That's
only 69 degrees out there right now.
Yeah.
I would actually take
69.
That.
I'd take 69 right now. That's not a bad temperature, actually.
Well, when you deal with 30 and 40 the majority of the year, I guess you're right. It's a blessing in disguise. I guess you guys are right. I should be happy with that.
So Brian, I wanted to ask you before we get into Deuce Knight, obviously, I want to talk about his performance down at OT7 and everything else you saw down there. But did I see you're on Locked On now? Did I see that correctly?
I have been since last August doing the Florida State podcast.
Oh, wow. For some reason, I just came across it the other day. I think it was, I was on YouTube and it was a recommended video for me. And I was like, oh, I know that guy. I've seen that guy before a couple of times. So I should click on one of the videos. Okay. All right. So Brian Smith on Locked On Podcast Network, if you didn't know. So there you go. A little quick plug there. Brian, OT7, obviously it's put on by Overtime. And I know obviously the major recruiting platforms were down there and yourself obviously got to see firsthand. We obviously want to talk about Deuce Knight, but just other things we'll talk about as well. Let's first talk about Deuce. I want to phrase it this way and just kind of get your insight here. When we had you on a couple months ago, you had just seen Deuce in person and you had talked about, man, the tools are crazy. Like you see it, but like hasn't had a private quarterback coach, has only had like one or two just kind of throwing sessions down there with a private quarterback coach. So he's still very raw as far as from the technical perspective. My first question for you is seeing him now again this offseason for second or multiple times, I should say. Have you seen incremental improvements from a technical side? I'm just very curious about that now that he is working with a few more guys. He's worked with Phillip Rivers. He's been down throwing with Notre Dame guys. Have you seen technical improvement throughout the offseason from him?
More than just incremental, it's consistently better now, and it's probably above the shoulders more so, which made him a little more comfortable. For anybody that hasn't seen Deuce play live, his film is fun to watch. It's not, you have to see him live to understand how athletic he is. I was joking with him at OT7 on Thursday night. You're only allowed to do one event at like this skills thing. And they were getting ready to start the vertical. And I'm like, well, you're going to win this, right? And he goes, well, I can't do it because I'm doing the quarterback thing. I'm like, what? The guy that won it with 35 and a half. Well, Deuce does over 42 and a half inches. Like his twitchiness is really hard to define. And he's over 200 pounds now. But he's learned to dial it back, how to take something off on the shorter passes, how to go from reads 2, 3, and 4 and not freak out. His footwork is more solid. He looked a lot better. I think 247 even put him as their alpha dog on Saturday. So
Nice.
He played pretty well on Friday when I was there. And like, he doesn't care if he throws a touchdown, an incompletion, a guy drops it, whatever. He keeps the same demeanor. He's really starting to mature in many different ways. So I was surprised at how quickly he went from where I saw him in Mississippi to where I saw him in Tampa. I mean, that's only a couple months difference, but he did it in multiple days. Everything he did was very consistent. And that's not a guy that's a project player. He's much more developed now. I don't know what all he's learned, but it looks a lot better.
Brian, I wanted to say something before I let Shaun jump into the conversation, because you just remind me of something. I actually meant to text you this the other day. So you mentioned the 42 plus inch vertical that Deuce has. We actually got some of the verified numbers that the guys did at Irish Invasion pretty recently here. At 6'5", 206 pounds, which is what he weighed in at officially at Notre Dame. He ran 4.53 in the 40 and also had a 10'8.5" broad jump. Again, folks, combine that with, and his short shuttle number, I forget what exactly it was. I think it was like 4.28 or something like that. It was one of the better short shuttle there of anyone, not of quarterbacks, of defensive backs, wide receivers, anybody there. We are truly talking about an elite athlete at the position. There is no doubt about that, Shaun.
Yo, I'm telling you guys, I've never seen the likes of him at Notre Dame. And he's not even there yet. And that's how special. We talked about this phrase, right? There's a difference between generational quarterback and generational talent. Generational quarterback comes from the production and what you've done. Generational talent is what we're talking about with this young man. And you add that to what Brian just told us about his maturation. It's a self-maturation that you kind of see from one event to the next. But I want to get into what Brian was able to observe as far as him being a piper of sorts. Because it just seems like whether it's recruits or people covering him, everybody has their eyes on Deuce Knight when he's at an event. What is that like covering this young man, and who is he like as a person when he's at these events? Because it seems like it's so natural and he's really just being himself.
He's a pretty quiet kid. He's a typical Southern guy, very respectful, doesn't say much. I'll walk up to him. He knows I'm a Notre Dame guy, so he'll chop it up with me about a few recruits, this and that, but doesn't matter what he's doing. He's always the same. I'm guessing, Shaun, that's one of the reasons why kids like him, because some of the guys that get to this level, they're not much fun to deal with. He is not that way. Deuce is pretty chill, and I think he'll represent himself, his family, Notre Dame well when he's wearing the gold helmet, so on and off the field. As far as what it's like to be around him at an event, everybody talks to him, and it's not a problem. There are certain guys, they just find ways to try to avoid them. Like, you can tell who they are immediately. Those are the kids I just avoid. I'm done dealing with that stuff. He is not that way. It didn't matter if it was me or Roy or anybody else that was going up to talk to him. Chad Simmons, he's cool with it. I wish I had more people that I dealt with like that in general, let alone the five-star kind. Like, he's a five-star talent. I don't know where he'll end up ranked, but he's a five-star talent. He's not acting like one. I'll take all of those I can get. So to answer everything, like, he is what you're looking for from the media, because we deal with a lot of pain in the you-know-whats in the recruiting industry.
Jerks.
He's just not one of
A
them.
lot of jerks. A lot of jerks. Yes.
Oh,
yes. The PG
absolutely.
version. A lot of jerks. Well, Brian, I want to ask, because for people that didn't follow OT7 for the couple days there, right? So there's some of the best players in all of high school football out there, and in multiple classes too. We're not just talking about 2025 kids. There's 2026s and all that type of stuff. Let me ask you, because you mentioned it, Alpha Dog by 247 on 3, I believe, also named him the MVP, the quarterback MVP of the event as well, for the performance that he had out there. As far as quarterbacks, who are some of the other guys that maybe stood out, and where would you say Deuce ranked amongst that group overall, in your opinion?
The kids, I've gotten to the point where I kind of know most guys, but like the kid that I've been starting to watch is a 26 quarterback out of Mission Viejo. Because I do the Florida State podcast, they recently had him work out and they offered him. His name's Luke Fahey. They won state in California. I know Notre Dame's already set, but this is a kid that can play for any school. Great kid like Deuce. Those were the only two that I really tried to pay attention to. And you know what? I see why they have the offers. The kid that's committed to Florida State is why I watched him a little bit and stuff. But I was focusing outside the numbers on corners and receivers for the most part. So
Gotcha.
as far as Deuce goes, comparing like the way he played at this event, and Ward only knows how many quarterbacks I've seen throw this year. There's only 2 or 3 guys in the country that have similar talent. If I could only take one quarterback for its upside in the country, it's either him or the Curtis kid in 26 that's committed to Georgia. He doesn't run as well as let me be clear. He's not like Deuce can play any skill spot. Yeah. This kid's just his arm strength is probably even higher than Deuce's, and he's got the right personality and all those kinds of things. He just plays at a 1A school in Nashville. That's my only concern. And every event that I've been to, Under Armour, 7-on-7, etc., the biggest thing I always tell the kids, especially at quarterback, when a play goes really wrong, how do you react thereafter? He had one just terrible interception early in a game, didn't do nothing, didn't say nothing, whatever, came back out on the field and then just played really good. He shrugged it off. A lot of guys, even in college, struggle with that. And I don't remember anybody else this year being as consistent with his mental as Deuce. Now, if you'd have told me that based on when I saw him last fall play at a high school game or when I saw him at Elite 11 or et cetera, I wouldn't have believed that because I could tell, especially at Elite 11, he was worried about things because everybody's sitting there watching him. He's doing drills he's not familiar with. And he finally got kind of loose and he threw some really good balls, but he was inconsistent. This tournament, he didn't care what anybody thought. He just let it rip. And he overthrew a few guys, but for the most part, even the money ball shots down the field were tremendous. You knew when to put arc on it, etc. So he's as talented as any player in the country, and it's finally starting to show in more consistent ways.
Let's talk about
Sorry, go ahead, Shaun. You go.
No. I just wanted to tap into, since we were talking about the quarterback Fahey, I wanted to tap into about that position moving forward with the acquisition of DJ Uiagalelei, and then, just that team after losing a lot. What are you expecting? How formidable of an opponent would you expect to be walking into South Bend in November? That's what I'm interested in.
As far as a combination of coaching and talent, it'll be the best team they play in the regular season. But it's because the coaching maximizes better than anybody. I don't know what their elixir is, but they're the one school I don't get nervous with 10-plus transfers. I don't know. I have no idea what it is. They just have an incredible culture in Tallahassee now. And it's bizarre because if you remember in 2022, they had a 3-game losing streak in the middle of the season. And I thought, this is about to go sideways. Then they didn't lose another game until they played Georgia. This offseason got obliterated. But that happens to everybody pretty much when they play Georgia. So whatever. But they've just got a culture that's crazy. And now they've also, I'm not sold on DJ per se. Yeah. He's pretty good. He's not great. But they killed it in the portal again. They got an elite receiver. They got elite offensive lineman, elite defensive lineman. They don't have a spot you go, man, they don't have an answer there. This is maybe the only time in my life I can remember saying, Florida State's playing Notre Dame. I'll take Florida State's offensive line over Notre Dame's. They got a left tackle that's going to get drafted. That's not Florida State's forte.
Is it Darius Washington?
Yeah, he'll get drafted. I mean, he's not going to be like Joe Alt, but like he was all ACC or whatever. You got a left tackle like that, you're in pretty good spot. And they got a couple of guys that would start at other schools on the offensive line that stuck around that aren't starting. Like that never happens. So their culture is really, really good. They got depth. Got Rodell Williams from Alabama at running back, et cetera. They're going to be fine. The only concern is, they lost a ton of guys that were production. Jaheim Bell, obviously Johnny Williams, and then, of course, Keon Cole. That's as good a 1-2-3 punch as you're going to have in the country. And they lost all 3 in 1 year. That's a lot.
And Trey Benson at running back, too. So it's a
lot. It is. So I told Florida State people, the only worry you guys have to worry about, if it's really cold in South Bend, I'm taking the Irish.
You know what's crazy? He just mentioned
don't play that well up there. They won't.
He just mentioned the offensive line. Normally, you wouldn't take a Notre Dame quarterback over a Florida State quarterback.
This year, I would.
This year you would.
It's a very abnormal roster scenario.
Yeah.
You know, Notre Dame's much better in the secondary than they usually are. Florida State's loaded in the secondary again. That's not knocking, but it's a really weird roster combination. So it's good to have Florida State good again because they're for a while.
Yeah.
They were hard to watch. Like those 19, 20, 21 teams. I mean, bro, that was bad. So it's good to have them around. I'm not saying I want to see Florida State rolling like they were in the mid-90s, but you know what? It's better that than watching them be a 500 football team because that should never be the case at Florida State.
Yeah, I remember the last time. I think we talk about this, Ryan. I say, look, when I became impressed with Mike Norvell was the actual first time that I laid my eyes on that team when they visited South Bend at the beginning of his tenure, and they got down big, and they just kept fighting.
They
like Notre Dame
dude, that was such a frustrating game.
It was frustrating, and I'm like, wait
Notre
a minute.
Dame
that was Jack Cohn, right?
Down.
Wasn't that Jack Cohn? That was Jack Cohn.
They didn't
game,
put
right?
the pedal down, and Florida State hung around.
Yes,
it could have been worse than it was.
Yeah,
that was on Notre Dame as much as anything. But you have to give Florida State credit.
Yeah,
you can't let the guy off the mat, and they absolutely did.
They absolutely did.
Wasn't that Mackenzie Milton too? Right? Wasn't Mackenzie Milton the one that came in
was
and
the
like
one
started
the
comeback?
Jordan Travis came in that game, didn't he?
Jordan Travis
came in.
Jordan Travis was there for 112 years.
So he's probably there. He's probably there. Good. Brian, funny one. This actually, I think Notre Dame fans will like this one. Move it away from Deuce for a second and for Florida State. There was a player that I remember you texted me about a month and a half ago for the first time, and I didn't know him at that time, that actually just got offered by Notre Dame pretty recently. That was Braylon Womack out of the state of Mississippi. I know you've been able to see him in person, 5-star by at least one platform so far. Your impressions of Braylon Womack, who obviously Notre Dame made a really good impression with pretty recently here at Irish Invasion.
There's a couple of really good points about him. Number one, intellectually, maturity-wise, this would be the kind of guy like Shaun would want somebody to date his daughter. Like he's got it together. Like for real. Like big picture, Mississippi kids don't typically have a broad perspective. He was talking about that with me. He said, I want to see some of the kids, go out to Oregon or go to Michigan or go to whatever the schools, Notre Dame, whatever. This state needs to think a little bigger. And I was like, wow, I've never heard a Mississippi kid say that. Obviously that bleeds Notre Dame, and that's next. His dad right now, he can say whatever he wants. He's already all in for it's not even debatable. But parents always want their kid to go to Notre Dame. So I don't pay much attention to that. If it went by that, Notre Dame would win the national title at least 2 out of 3 years because they'd have the number one class every year. They would.
Yeah.
The kids don't want to deal with a lot of the crap that we talk about with Notre Dame. They don't want the academics, the weather, whatever. He doesn't care about distance, but he is a definite Ohio State fan. He made that very clear. So, So it's one of those two schools. They're about as polar opposite as they can get. But at the same time, he's looking at both, and he said they were both great visits. Him on the field, this is funny. I was standing on their sideline. He was played for Coastline Stars. And I asked him, I said, which one is Womack? I didn't know it, but I was talking to his dad. So that was a little awkward at first. I didn't know that. He didn't let me know at first. It was kind of funny. And he said, it's that kid right there.
You tell me. Yeah.
And I'm like, he doesn't look like a safety. He was built like a running back. Like he's got NFL running back hips and legs. He's put together. He's a nutso when it comes to like the workout regimen, and good for him. He's right at 200 pounds, and he looks like he's walking out of college. He's got 2 years of high school left. So he played the nickel spot, and the other teams completely ignored him. John Garcia and I were standing right there trying to get an eval on him. I don't know what to tell you because they won't throw the ball near him. He was just rerouting an underneath zone. So I asked him afterwards about how do you play on your high school team? He plays for Hartfield Academy in Jackson, Mississippi. They just put him against whoever the best receiver is on the other squad, and he just follows him. So I know he can play man as well. I just haven't seen it. But the build and the attitude and how fast he can change direction and all that is all A+. So he'll have 50 offers, and he's a kid that will be discussed on this show many times.
Well, you mentioned Womack, and you mentioned Notre Dame and how the perception of Notre Dame is changing in the South, whether it be Florida, Georgia. Give us like the 2 or 3 keys that you feel like have happened. Like, is there a Deuce Knight effect? Or is it something that they've done as a coaching staff? What has really happened? Because they haven't made that playoff run yet. That would be totally a game changer. They haven't made that yet. What have they done in this short time to kind of change things in the South that they get in on kids like Braylon Womack and Deuce Knight?
Well, before I say this, the following, because it's going to back up a certain person who runs this site very well, he owes me a steak for the following statement. It's partially due to not having a head coach who's lazy at recruiting like the last one. So I know everybody on this show that listens, I'm not as down on Brian Kelly as Driscoll, but it ain't far off. Like, he's lazy in recruiting sometimes. Sometimes he's not. That is not a Marcus Freeman problem. Marcus still talks to Deuce all the night. Deuce Knight all the time, and that makes a huge difference. But his guy is Gino. He told me that from the first time that I talked to him. And that's kind of the prevalent theme with all. It doesn't matter which kid I talk to that Notre Dame's recruiting. Whoever their position coach is, it's automatic. I have a great relationship with him. I can't tell you how many times that I have got off the phone or met with a kid over the last 20 plus years covering Notre Dame that somebody's like, yeah, they're recruiting me. But you could just tell like the effort wasn't there. And I'm like just cussing afterwards because I'm like, are you even trying to do your job? Like, how hard is it to recruit to Notre Dame? Just don't screw it up. And they did. So it's the effort. How many times have you seen people be successful with lackluster effort? It doesn't work that way. Notre Dame has a great product, but you got to take it to them, because I joke with people all the time. Like, I lived in Florida for 7 years. Well over half the kids there would not know what state Notre Dame's in, and I'm being very kind. So it's hard. Now that they've gotten a few kids that are bigger names, Deuce, getting a quarterback, I don't think people realize, is humongous because of the perception factor. So Shaun was very smart to bring that up. And then it's just kind of pot luck. Deuce is also a very easy young man to talk to. So you've maximized just through osmosis. All of those personalities, like Deuce, there's a kid on Coastline Stars that's a safety. He's trying to get Notre Dame to recruit. It's just the kid's interested. That's just part of this program. They like the guys they're dealing with. So the kids promote it to other recruits they talk to. I don't even know if Notre Dame knew it at first when he's talking to this kid. But Darian Carty, he's a kid from Pensacola, played at Emmett Smith's old high school at Scambia. But it's like, it's infectious. Now it's cool to be associated with Notre Dame in a lot of spots. Here's the kicker, though. Shaun also mentioned it would be a complete game changer if Notre Dame did something in the playoffs. Here's the best example for you. I cover Miami, and there is no staff in the country that does a better job than them in recruiting. They are trying everything they can to get elite guys out of Georgia, which is good luck. Like, if you're going to get those kids, you got to beat somebody like that in the playoff. Kids in that state, the elite kids, there's only like 3-4 programs that have a shot. Right now, Notre Dame's pretty much not one of them. They can get a lot of the guys right off that cuff, but they're not getting them. For Notre Dame to get completely over the hump in the South, they got to beat somebody like Michigan or Ohio State or Florida State in the playoff. Like, it's got to be everybody in the world is watching this game, and Notre Dame won.
Yep.
That is the final piece to the puzzle.
Agree. Well, Shaun, it makes complete sense, Brian, when you talk about like Gino Guidugli, as far as like him being the main piece. Because I remember talking to Deuce for the first time, and he was just raving about Gino, and you knew from the second that was like the main cog. And Shaun, we talked about though in 2026, Brian, like I know we've talked a little bit about it. Notre Dame had a great chance at like 3 to 4 ish quarterbacks in 2026.
Absolutely.
I would say they're the leader for at least 2, maybe 3. Well, actually, I'll say this: they were the leader for 3 at least at the 2026 class, and it was because of Gino. Like, it is. Because we talked about it before. He does. And he's a grinder, man. Like, he is out there doing his due diligence. Like, because you know how it is, man. And this isn't a Notre Dame specific thing, but we hear like the visit schedule that coaches are going on during like the open period and the evaluation period. And then you check in with the kid and it's like, oh, they didn't come to see me. It's just like, well, where were they all day? Like, I have no idea where they were. Gino is there every single time, seeing every player that he is scheduled to see. That effort, I think, can't be undersold, Shaun. I really don't think it can be undersold, man.
No, it can't. And I think the great points that Brian just brought up, and we keep telling people, Notre Dame for a long time, going back to what he said, the laziness of the predecessor and some of the staff. Now you have a staff led by Marcus Freeman that's all in. And it's not using the low-hanging fruit of excuses and obstacles that obviously everyone in the world Notre Dame knows that Notre Dame faces in recruiting. Like, All right. It's cold in South Bend. Yeah. You might not have the 6-foot blondes that you might have down south or out in California.
It's too tall
But
anyway. It's too tall
yeah,
anyway.
but that's too tall for you, Double R. I'm sorry.
It is. It is actually 6 foot's way too tall for me.
But you have a staff that's bought into what Notre Dame is and what they can sell. And they believe that the elite of the elite actually want those things. And guess what they're showing? You know what? They're right. There are kids all over the country that want and are interested in what Notre Dame has to offer. And they're willing to go out and grind and sell it. And now Notre Dame fans, what they've been asking for, now we have to relax, level our emotions, because now we're on the roller coaster of big time recruiting, where you get the flips, you get the decommitments, you get having to re-recruit somebody that's a top kid. This comes with the territory. I know it's new territory. Emotions are all over the place for recruits. How do you think this plays out in your estimation for Notre Dame now that they're in the big boy territory? You just gave us the blueprint of having to beat one of those top teams. Do you think that moment is going to actually take place over the next couple of years for Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, Brian?
I think it will. And I've listened to a bunch of different podcasts, people having different opinions. You know, I listened to Priester, I listened to you guys, I listened to some national. And the opinion on Notre Dame still differs because a lot of people just hate Notre Dame. But the ones that are objective, everybody thinks Notre Dame's a playoff team. The question is now, how do you get over the hump? Because there's no precedent for it. They've not won a playoff game. They don't win meaningful bowl games. They just don't. That's just reality. So until you prove it, everybody should be skeptical because that's statistical fact. They haven't.
Yep.
When they do that, you know, it'll be a big deal. But like, I think I understand the playoff format. Let's say Notre Dame goes 11-1. I don't know, they lose to Louisville or somebody like that. Win 11-1. If they get like the number 6 seed and they're playing the 11 seed or whatever at home in South Bend, playing like Tennessee has a chance to be like a team that scrapes in. That would be good enough, in my opinion, with the recruiting. Like if they won 31-20 over a quality SEC team, and that's got a humongous fan base, it would bring half their state to that to try to buy tickets, by the way. That's another story. Half the stadium will be orange, I'd imagine. But the point is still the same. On TV and the fandom with all that, that might be the final piece. They got to win the first game this year. They can't, especially if they get a home game, they cannot lose. I don't care if it's Georgia that comes here, which it's not going to be, but if it was, they cannot lose that game.
Yeah.
I think they'll win at least one playoff game this year or next, but the schedule this year is so weak compared to most Notre Dame schedules. You got multiple MAC teams, et cetera. Like, it needs to be this year. You're going to get beat up less. Yeah. You don't have Caleb Williams at USC. What's their over-under at FanDuel? Like 7.5 or something?
Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, even though you play out there, you're the better team. A&M's got a first-year head coach there. I know he's good, but still first year. There's no reason to say there's a game on this schedule like, man, that's an L.
Yeah.
There's not one. Florida State is going to be the best all-around thing they play, but it's in November in South Bend. That's really disadvantage to Florida State. Those kids, I'm telling you, Florida kids do not understand cold. 40 degrees to them is -5. So it's going to be hard for them to play in South Bend that time of year. I think this is the year Florida State, some of those other teams see what Notre Dame can be, what they used to be, and Notre Dame makes a little bit of a run. I'm still picking Georgia to win it. I'm not an idiot, but at the same time, Notre Dame's going to kind of take another bump up, and I think that'll be the final piece to get them into the realm where they aren't going to just go get a 5-star D tackle out of Georgia because they're not going to pay $500,000 for him, but they can get about everything else. So that'll change their program as well.
Yeah, and it needs to happen. I think you said it perfectly. This is the year. This is the year that everything aligns. It has. I mean, Shaun, I'm so tired of just saying, "Oh, next year." No. You have to change the narrative at some point. Like you said, not the hardest schedule that Notre Dame has had. Has now the 12-team playoff format. Like all these things are aligning to making that run. Notre Dame needs to capitalize on it.
Let's see. Brian said something there. Maybe he thought it was going to go over my head. Is that the going rate right now for a big-time defensive tackle? Like 500?
More than that sometimes, Shaun.
I need to go.
Here's how bad it is. I'm glad y'all are sitting down. One of my buddies interviews a player, and he gives him a little bit of NIL money at an SEC school. He was not looking to leave. Okay, not looking to leave, and it was portal. He was offered randomly, unsolicited, $500K to go to another school, and he wasn't a dude. He was a backup.
Wow.
So what is the 5-star kid like Justice Terry, who is from little tiny Manchester, Georgia, about an hour from where I live? When USC suddenly got him to decommit from Georgia, the school he committed to as a sophomore in high school, because he's a Georgia fan. What do you think USC gave Justice Terry?
Man.
That's got to be 7 figures. It's got to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the problem, because D tackle is the one spot Notre Dame does not get the guy. It's the only spot. They've even gotten a few DNs occasionally, but D tackle, when was the last 5-star D tackle they sent? I don't know if they have. Those kids you got to buy. The money's just crazy.
It is.
That's my only concern about the program, and I don't know if there's a fix for that.
Ryan, I think I'm going to adopt. I'm about to go adopt because I'm done having kids.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm going to go adopt and just look for a big kid. If that's what they're paying right now, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I had talked to an agent in the NIL space that helps kids go from school to school, right? Like that's basically all he does. And Shaun, a lot of schools, I don't think every school has adopted this because, as Brian said, like that's a flat rate, like here you go type of situation. But there are a lot of schools now that are saying, I'm going to pay you monthly. And I know that there was a defensive lineman in the portal because there's no guarantee a kid's there more than 6 or 7 months, right? So I know for a fact there was a defense line in the portal who's a mid-tier portal guy. He was not a stud. He was a solid player. $100K a month, Shaun, because they're formatting. He's going to be there 6 or 7 months, right? Oh, 6 or 700K. Then he's out of here. Then he's off our.
And he's not their starting 3-tech either.
Exactly. But there's stipulations on that though, right, Brian? If the kid gets hurt or the kid doesn't play or the kid quits or whatever, then we don't have to pay you anymore. We're only paying you monthly. You know what I mean? So
that's the new model. I've heard the same because several schools got burned. Thank you, Iowa, with what they did with a certain offensive tackle that came and went.
Yes.
You know, that's on Iowa, by the way. That's on Iowa. Like, you were the idiots that paid up for whatever. But you have to put in stipulations. So I'm curious,
man. Contracts are coming. I'm telling you, they're coming.
When one of these boosters gets so mad that he doesn't even care, that it causes some rifts in the recruiting world, and he sues one of these kids' parents because they signed and then they didn't do X, Y, and Z for the school. That'll cause recruiting problems. That's the reason the kids are in total control, because if somebody sues a player, then it's going to be hard to recruit. But at some point, something like that's got to happen, because like the Tyler Barron kid, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Louisville, he was at 3 schools after Tennessee in like 3 months.
Yes. Oh, the running back that transferred from Miami, Ohio, the Rashad Amos kid, he was at like 3 or 4 different schools too. I'm like, we are decommitting and flipping as a portal kid now, man. Like,
they have to have a rule. You could only transfer once in every 6 months. They got to do it. They got to do it because it's just too much. Somebody's going to get into a bad situation with this. It's going to end badly for somebody.
It's going to happen eventually. Great insight again from Brian Smith. Brian, before we let you get out of here, quick plug. Like I said, you're on Locked On. I know you're doing all Hurricanes. Plug everything, social medias, all that good stuff before we let you get out of here.
Sure, man. It's Twitter, or X as it may be, at FBScout_Florida. I cover Auburn on Auburn Daily. I cover Miami, all Hurricanes, and I do a Florida State podcast, believe it or not, on the Locked On podcast. It's Locked On Seminoles. Matter of fact, that's what I'm getting ready to do after this show. So anything in the South, basically, is what I got. And I also have some more Notre Dame recruiting news for the message board at Irish Breakdown here pretty soon. So just a little plug there as well.
That's a great plug. Boards at irishbreakdown.com. Brian, we'll have to have you on very soon, my friend. Thank you so much for your time, as always.
Take care, buddy. I'll see you.
Shaun, hey, there's our man, Brian Smith. Always insightful, always some great information there, my friend. We'll have to have a spirited debate about the format of transfer portal and NIL givens over the next few months, man.
Hey, let me tell you something, man. We're going to talk about this later on our pod.
Okay.
The hypocrisy. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. The hypocrisy I saw surrounding that whole Olympic situation. Yes. Where people have no problem with entitlement and have a huge problem with entitlement when it comes to recruiting. It's like
Yeah, it's huge.
I can't wait to talk about it. But that just go. I didn't know the going rate is 500K. I'm literally going to go.
Shaun, that might be that's it obviously changes based upon the school and the type of player, but yeah, I know for a fact that some kids are getting more than that. Like, there's no doubt. So, yeah, man. I mean, Shaun, I was at the combine and I was talking to an NIL agent, a guy that handles a lot of the transfer stuff. And some of the stuff I was hearing, man, I honestly couldn't say it on the air because it would be a lot of gray area conversation, right?
No,
A lot of gray area conversation. So,
look, man, I don't have a problem with it. I have a huge problem with the adults throwing a temper tantrum and not setting parameters. It's embarrassing, man.
It's an adult problem, man. It's not the kid problem. Like, I always feel like we look at the kids for being money grabs and this and that, and it's just like, well, who blames them though? You're not putting any stipulations on anything. You're just allowing it to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's
But it's just a reallocation of the funds that were already being spent. Now they're legal.
Yeah. Oh, man, there's going to be a lot of spirited debates over this, Shaun. We've already had it a little bit on this channel as far as the NIL versus pay to play. And now that everyone can get paid, it's like, it's going to be, actually could help Notre Dame though, man. It actually could help Notre Dame a little bit, but
it has already helped Notre Dame in this off season.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. It's already helped Notre Dame tremendously.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. We have one super chat before we get out of here. It was from our guy, Iden Benami, and thank you so much for the super chat. It said, those Lamborghini and Ferraris were looking awesome at Notre Dame this weekend, shaking my head. Also, do you know why Jeremiah Owusu-Boateng and Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng have different last names? Yes, I know that they are, I don't believe, and I don't believe that they grew up in the same households. So different parents, as far as I think it's the mom is the same. And then there's two different fathers, I think is kind of the family dynamic there. So they have different last names. That also is partly why they hadn't been on campus together ever before this past weekend, because I don't think they grew up actually in the same household. So that's kind of just family dynamic stuff. I mean, I feel like most people could probably paste that together, but yeah, that's kind of, but thank you so much for that super chat. And that is a little bit of the family dynamic, the Owusu-Boateng versus Owusu-Boateng. Shawnee, we're out of here, folks. Make sure before you leave the YouTube channel, hit that like button. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. Favorite podcast platform, do the same. Subscribe, 5-star reviews. Boars.irishbreakdown.com, folks. I'm telling you, there's going to be recruiting intel over the next couple days. There's going to be recruiting intel this weekend. There's going to be visit previews. There's going to be visit recaps. Everything you need at irishbreakdown.com. That's Shaun Davis. Make sure to check in at the Lucky Lefty podcast as well. I know they're going live at, what's it, 4:05 Eastern time, I think I saw on YouTube.
They've started their practices at the school, so now they do the morning practice. They have a 7 a.m. practice out there. That's crazy.
Dang.
So now we have to go to afternoons for a little bit. Yeah.
I love it. So make sure you're subscribed over at Lucky Lefty Podcast as well, and check out the live show today. We'll check you guys very soon again here. Thank you all for joining the latest edition of the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.